Tulsi Gabbard meets Wall Street. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is indeed the Progressive Soapbox. Typically, I would have patron appreciation, but my wife is studying for an exam, and she's supposed to be taking that exam right now, so she can't necessarily join me for that. I was hoping she would be finished by now, but to be honest, that exam was going to be like 5 hours, and so that's not going to take place. So we're hoping to push that sometime during the week. So I want to have a show or two, and this show may go on for a bit, and so I may end up cutting this video. Tulsi Gabbard meets Wall Street. Part 2. And in fact, it's not even part 2. It's whatever the third number is in trace. Let's call it trace in Spanish. So just to give people a heads up on what I am talking about, I did a video, not necessarily going after, but challenging a Fox News article where the gentleman was saying that Tulsi Gabbard, Buttigieg, and Joe Biden was essentially meeting with Wall Street, that they were going to Wall Street. They were essentially being obsequious. Now, the connotations of this, of course, they're trying to get across that the Democrats are beholden to cash. Now, this is hilarious coming from Fox News, but nevertheless, it is coming from Fox News, and they're pointing a finger to that. Now, they were particularly going after Tulsi Gabbard, who had been on that network multiple times, which makes that much more dickish. So I challenged, I was like, no way, I don't believe it. You need to show me what you're going after if you're going to kind of make this assertion. Now, he never really showed his evidence. He just said, I have the evidence in my hand. I know what I'm talking about. And so I went after him in this video, and one of the events that I did see wasn't what he said it was. And so I went after him. I get word with a link saying, dude, I think you got that wrong. And I said, well, why do you think I got that wrong? Jordan hit me up, and he showed me this. Breakfast with presidential candidate and Hawaii Congressman Tulsi Gabbard, hosted by Favara Partners. Now, who is this? This gentleman here, Omid Malik. This is the guy who's hosting it. Omid Malik is founder and CEO of Favara Partners, a boutique merchant bank which invests partners' capital in growth businesses and acts as a liquidity provider for private placements on behalf of companies and institutional investors. Banker, equity banker, and people tend to call that Wall Street. Is somewhat of a shorthand in this case. Whether he actually physically works on Wall Street or not, the connotation is clear. I got it wrong. Meaning, in a technical sense, she was literally going to a meeting with a banker. Now, somebody made the point to me and in criticizing, saying, well, you said she was soliciting cash from that banker. And I said, fair enough. Here's the thing. This is one Tulsi Gabbard sitting down with that one banker. Tulsi meets Wall Street. Now, in the technical sense, in the literal sense, what I said was right. So let's just very first be clear on that point. Now, to deal with the main criticism of me on this case, it is true that I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard was soliciting money from this banker. That's true. But would we accept that from any other candidate? And there are two parts to this. So, I understand this part is slightly negative, but I just want to establish that I was right to recall that previous video, because technically she is essentially sitting with a banker. I think the issue that people have is the connotation, that it's not the technicalities of it, is more so saying that you're meeting with Wall Street and including this with Joe Biden gives this connotation as if she's as obsequious to cash as Biden. Her meeting with this guy doesn't in fact means that she's beholden to this guy. I don't think I said as much. It's just the technical details of it. I'm stuck with the technical details of it. I don't necessarily like the way it looks either, but I'm stuck with the technical details. So there's that part. As for the soliciting cash, do I believe that a campaign that is probably in need of cash, because she's not as well known, so she's not going to get as many donations as somebody like a larger campaign like Sanders, is going to meet somebody who just so happens to be an equity banker but doesn't want him to ask for cash from his friends? No, I don't believe that. Nor would I fault her for that, if that makes sense. This doesn't, however, means that she is somehow dirty, nor does it mean that any of the things that she's pushed for in this campaign changes. I don't think I said as much as that at all. I don't think I said that at all. I guess I'm trying to split hairs here. I'm trying to make the point that, yeah, technically this is true, but no, she's not Joe Biden. She's not a Buttigieg. She's not one of these people who are out here soliciting contributions. And in fact, he does ask for money on her behalf, even in this video, to who his friends, who I would believe will be in the banking industry. I don't think that's necessarily insane. And I want to review this video. I'm being strong on this point of saying that I'm right about the technical details, because I don't want... I got to be honest, I didn't fully understand the criticism. The moment that I understood that I was wrong on the first video and I corrected it, I thought, okay, I corrected my error. Clearly, the evidence is overwhelming that this event is going to take place and that this event took place. By the technicalities of it, he's right. The optics, however, were being put out in order to portray something wrong, so I agree with that point. But on the optics of it, they were right. I was stuck with the reality of it. That's it. I'm going to review this, because this was actually a really interesting conversation. There's several questions on this where she was asked, where Tulsi gives thoughtful answers. Like, this is not she doesn't do the Clinton BS answer. There are times where I think she's being overly political. And I know people call her dull and those type of things. But there's something to be said for somebody giving methodical and understood answers that are contemplative, as opposed to the non-answer. We're going to lead with our values, that type of nonsense. I want reality. And she nails that on a few points. She deals with the question of impeachment, which I can't love her answer more. I can't love her answer more. And she goes even into this question on the draft, which I haven't heard anyone ask her before. So I found that to be an interesting question. I want to expand on some of the things that Tulsi Gabbard is saying in these. And I may even slightly disagree with her in one or two of these. But I appreciate the way that she talks about this stuff. Honestly, I do. Because it gets to deeper questions or deeper conversations that you often don't get. I know what the third one was. Bought politicians. So one is going to be on the draft. One is going to be on bought politicians and how do you get through a system where these people are essentially bought. Another one has to do with impeaching Trump and whether she's for it or not and why. And will Democrats need to fail again before the Democratic Party changes? One last point, guys. Tulsi and Sanders are my two favorite people in this race. That hasn't changed. Nothing in this process has changed that. Me reporting it as is is not the same thing as me disliking. It's just it kind of an is what it is thing. All right. I suspect there are going to be people hitting me right now. Jamarl, this was debunked, and it's a false story. Can a millionaire be anti-war? This was No, what are you talking about? Like, this is my issue. The story is not a false story because we're about to talk about the conversation that these guys are having. And yes, a millionaire can be anti-war. Like, this is kind of my point. There are connotations associated with this notion of Wall Street. My point is, this story is technically true. Your issue is the connotation is not right. And I give you that. Fox News was pushing a false connotation. But the guy's literally a banker. Yes, millionaires can be anti-war. Hell, millionaires can be against the system that made them millionaires. I don't doubt any of that. I don't think I even said as much. I don't think I said as much. So, you can dislike me for that, but I think... But what am I saying that's wrong? Before I go into the thing, what am I saying that's wrong? Let's see. Tulsi's for reparations, okay. Tulsi's campaign donations will be funneled to Biden. Don't say that. That's wrong. Edward Klein, she's kind of in the... Will vote for whoever the nom is funneling money. Oh, I see what... Tulsi is for... How on earth did we get into Tulsi's for reparations? In pink, not stink. Can a millionaire be anti-war? Yes. But that's not debunking it. Like, God, man, that's not debunking it. Look, this guy can be the sweetest guy on the planet. He can be good as gold. He can be the greatest man alive. If reality was a simulation, I mean, granted, reality being a simulation, what's real in that point, it would be the same thing. It wouldn't be any difference. But if reality was a simulation in a way where we can look at ourselves outside of the system, and there was a value of morality that's associated with individuals, and that guy could have a 100. He could be at the top of the line in what a human being can be for a moral human being. And he could still be a millionaire. And he could still work on Wall Street. And Tulsi Gabbard could still have this breakfast with that guy as he works on Wall Street. And when Fox News runs that story and says Tulsi Gabbard is meeting with Wall Street, technically that story would be correct. And if I ran a story attacking the guy for running that story, I would be technically wrong. And I would have to go back and technically repudiate myself, which is what I did. Again, not saying she's bought, not saying she's kowtowing, not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying the technicalities of the story is right. All right. God. 12 minutes. Oh, that's way too long. Nevertheless, let's go into the story. And I'll try to put some speed about myself as I go about this. Look, this was a really good conversation, by the way. The people asked really good questions, interesting questions, more than anything else. So let's review parts of this. So first, I want to start off with the guy telling you who he is. Or Tulsi telling you who the guy is.
Well, thanks, first of all, Omid, for hosting us, gathering us together here today, inviting your friends and their friends to come out and give me this opportunity to introduce myself. Just by way of brief background, which is linked to the answer to your question, I'm a soldier. I'm in the Army National Guard. I've served now for...
All right, I just wanted her to announce who the person was, just so you guys knew I wasn't crazy and I wasn't bullshitting. I wasn't making it up. I wanted her to announce who the individual was. All the information will be linked below. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a heart of gold. It just means the guy's a banker. All right, so let's go to the first one. So the first one has to do with the draft. I initially didn't care about this answer until she answered it because she went to an interesting way. It's just there's certain questions I want Tulsi asked, and no one asked those questions. These things on foreign policy, what the world looks like based on her foreign policy goals, and if the United States pulls back, does that mean that other forces will fill up the gap and that type of stuff? I'm curious on her perspective on events like that. No one ever goes there. But so let's get to the first question on the draft.
For over a year. Your question about the draft.
He basically asked her, look, if you enacted a draft, do you believe that we will continue these regime change wars? Meaning, if you institute a draft, if who's a random thing, anybody could go, meaning your kid, whether your kid has $1 in his pocket or whether your kid has $1 million in his pocket, you can get plucked from the draft. If it was random choice in that way, do you honestly believe that we would continue to have these regime change wars? Would the public be more invested if that public would be ripped from their lives and thrown into a hellish situation? Interesting question. Don't get me wrong. Let's hear your answer.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that the draft. I don't think we should reinstate the draft, because as a soldier, I don't want to be downrange with somebody who doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, but the question was not should.
Isn't it interesting? People have so many different perspectives. And in this situation, her perspective is of a soldier. That was her first perspective. Now, my perspective of this was political. It's not a question of whether you, as a soldier, want somebody downwind of you that decided that they wanted to be in that conflict. The question more so is, how do we keep those soldiers out of that conflict at all? And in a political sense, would people be more engaged in that process if their asses was on the line? 1% of the country is in the military. 1%, just 1%. I think it's like 1 or 2%. Which means that 98% of the country is essentially detached from the political instrument or the fighting instrument. Imagine for the moment if your fist just went around punching people in the face and they were completely detached from the rest of your body. Your body doesn't quite know what your fists are out there doing. You have a Frankenstein monster of sorts, where the rest of the country doesn't fully care. They eat their Cheerios, they play their Xbox, they have sex with their wives and their girlfriends and their mistresses, and they go on about their day. These guys are out there fighting wars. The president's men. The president get his private army of sorts. Would it be that way, though, if that guy couldn't play that Xbox? If, that woman couldn't go to her sewing class after work or whatever? You get my point? If everyone's life in this country was affected by the military instrument, meaning when the president decided that he wanted to do some random war, would they care more about it if they could be drafted? That's the basics of the question. She's answering this from the standpoint of a different perspective than the one that he asked. They're going to clarify. I just think it's interesting in the way she answered. That's all. Let's keep going. She's going to get further into this question.
It be reinstated, but if we had a draft, do you think we would have unnecessary wars?
I don't know the answer to that, because, and the reason why I don't think that will solve the problem is because the deeper issue is those who benefit from these continued wars are the ones who continue to push and beat these war drums, and they will continue to profit, just as they did back in Vietnam. I think that if there was the draft as in Vietnam, you would probably have a lot more people in this country who were thinking about these issues. It would be more top of mind. They would hold their leaders more accountable. And so when we talk about the cost of war, every single service member, every single military family, we feel this. We continue to feel this now. We still have troops who are being killed overseas now in countries like Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq. But this is why everywhere I go, in every town, every living room, every kitchen, for those who don't have that direct connection to the human cost of war, I talk to them, well, what do you care about? Well, healthcare is a huge issue on people's minds. We talk about the lack of resources. Addressing the cost of war in our foreign policy is central to our being able to make sure that we've got quality healthcare, to make sure people have clean water to drink in this country. It's not a guarantee. People don't have that in a lot of communities across the country. Things like protecting our environment, rebuilding crumbling infrastructure. So while reporters will sometimes say, hey, well, why do you talk about foreign policy so much? This is why, because it is central to everything else. And for the rest of the candidates who are not addressing this issue, even though the most important responsibility that the president has is to be commander-in-chief, they're making a lot of promises that will turn out to be empty because they're not dealing with this drain on our taxpayer dollars and where it's currently going.
That's strong. I like that. And by the way, I think she's right. She has several good points in this. Like, the deeper issue in the war thing goes into this notion of essentially profit. People profit. There's a certain degree of, there's a difference between the people who fight the wars versus the people who profit from the wars. So there's a disconnect. I push other people's kids into war and I reap the benefits from it. I don't necessarily see the outcomes of the things or the decisions that I make. That needs to stop. But in an odd way, she talked herself into his perspective. Like, because she said, not many people is affected by those wars per se. At least not many people from the standpoint of Americans. And yeah, if there were more people in a draft, there'd be more people who were paying attention to that issue because they could get drafted. But she goes into a different way with this, saying, what do you care about? That type of stuff. But I think our overall basic point is, look, the main issue here is people who profit from these wars. There's an issue with this. This is somewhat of the disconnect. Not many people have to fight those wars, meaning, like 2% of the nation, while a smaller percentage profits. I think she's right on the incentive thing, meaning there's a fiscal incentive in order to propagate wars. Whether you want to talk about the weapons contracts, hell, we're the number one weapons contractor in the world at this point. And you know who what weapon contractors loves? War. It's good for their bottom line. So there's that part. But I think there's a deeper issue than that: education. And I know people use that as a catchphrase, and I mean this almost in the most literal sense of the word: education. For the last 2 weeks, I've been binge listening to. Insomnia has its benefits of sorts, but binge listening to Beaver's Stalingrad's 1, 2, and 3, and Beaver's Berlin 1 and 2. I haven't got to his Civil War thing, his Spanish Civil War series. It is astonishing to listen to those books. And also his other one. He has another one called World War II, I believe, the name of it. But it's astonishing to listen to those books and to hear some of the things that those governments were doing, either before the Cold War started, while they were in the middle of that war, and even in the way Hitler was doing things kind of to take countries and blame it, like this kind of false flag stuff. It is hard to see that and to unsee it. Meaning, it's hard to read that. You can see it take place, meaning you have a historical reference, and then you look at what the United States does. I'm saying we need to have an honest reading of history in regards to the behavior of this country over the past few years. And not just past few years, going back to Vietnam, going back before the Vietnam War. Honest reading of history, not this kind of snapshot of history that they give you in school, but an honest reading of behavior of the CIA and the various governments of the country. And it's not to hit America, but it is to give the public a clear reading on what governments do. They need to have this clear understanding on what are the extent, what are the things the governments have done in the past. So, when stuff like this come up, that they're not so easily misled. Because you will never get these paragons of virtues to take power. There will never be a situation where you're going to have a consistent show of one paragon of virtue after the next, after the next, after the next. That's not going to happen. You have to have some level of accountability in the process with a public that understands and is a little bit more, quote unquote, woke than it was. Or at the very least, I would say currently is. Just my 2 cents. But I like her answer. Let's go to her next one. This next one has to do with bought politicians. How do you get anything done when you have the system of lobbying? Meaning the system that you just talked about, the system that incentivizes profits over human beings, even in the case of war, over human life. A more violent and vicious world from their standpoint is a more profitable world for them. We're not a United States. We have different interests. We have different things that drive us. How do you change the world, even from the role of the presidency, in a world like that, when everybody is essentially going to be against you on this issue? Not everybody, but clearly the world is rigged in a particular way. Let's see. All right. Let's flip.
to not listen to these chicken hawks and
And a lot of these questions.
And by the way, one last point, the military budget. She makes a dig at many of the other politicians that are running in the race. I don't know if you heard it. It was quick. It was somewhat of a quip. But if these guys aren't willing to deal with the military budget, then they're not serious about their domestic priorities. If your country is spending over $1 trillion a year for the military, and I know it's like 700, but they add other stuff into it in order to get to the trillion, but let's just say $1 trillion. If your country is spending $1 trillion a year for military, that is money that is not being put towards domestic spending. They always ask, how are you going to pay for this or how are you going to pay for that? Think about how much money we're talking about. $1 trillion a year just for a violent world. Are there ways of dealing with the animosity? Why is our world continually getting more hostile? Have you ever thought of that? Like, regardless of the peace treaties and everything else, why is there always more hostility in the world? And is there somebody that profits from that hostility in the world? I mean, come on. If you're not willing to deal with the military budget, you're not being serious. That's your point. Let's hear this one.
Have, and I know we're specifically talking about foreign policy.
Yeah, very, very dangerous.
Okay, right here. If lobbyists have that much power, how can you as president get anything done?
Allie, did you?
Yeah, so Carl's question, I think, in a way, was getting at this alignment of interests. And a lot of these questions have. And I know we're specifically talking about foreign policy.
Yeah.
But, so let's use foreign policy as an example. You're talking about sort of the Halliburton branding. How do you do anything? Republican, Democrat, Congress, Senate, how do you do anything given the lobby?
Yeah.
You're talking about surrounding yourself with people or economic interests.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing that I always come back to. I just can't figure out how you actually, even if you have that conviction and you have that experience, because thankfully no one governs alone. Given the system that we have in place, which is different than systems in the rest of the world, can you, having been there and seen it, can you get through that to a place where people in power are making decisions that don't have a million different personal and societal economic consequences?
I mean, this is really what's at the heart of all of this. Yes, to foreign policy, but across the board.
There's an interesting twist to this question that I think I missed the first time around. And that, if I'm not mistaken, Tulsi is not going to touch. She's not going to answer that one. Because the main thrust of the question boiled down to this notion of how can you get anything accomplished on... Initially, she said that I know this is about foreign policy, so let's use foreign policy. But she added, on the domestic front, without having essentially economic, let's call it a crisis. Understand, from the standpoint of our system, it's not always just laws that restrain the president and countries and the way countries behave. It's also the financial situations that those countries are in. If the stock market crashes, that to some degree incentivizes the president to stop that market from crashing because he's going to get blamed for this kind of iconic symbol of those things. If you remember what's taking place right now with Donald Trump and these tariffs with China, right now the Fed chair just came out to say, look, we're going to put easing on it. And the people in the market are freaking out because Trump said he's going to put tariffs on Mexico. They made it very clear that Trump is not going to maintain this policy. Because Trump couldn't maintain that policy. Now, the president of Mexico caved, which was bad. He should not have caved. It looks weak to cave, and people punish, especially leftists. They punish leftists for looking weak. They would rather you be wrong and strong than right and weak. But nevertheless, my point is this. Tulsi Gabbard, there are other restrictions on the president. And she's asking, how can you get the changes accomplished that you're saying you want to get accomplished, which is in some respects similar to Sanders, without there being this kind of catastrophe? And can you get that stuff through without ruining our country, or ripping our country in some way, or causing a certain degree of havoc and chaos? I think that's the bulk of her question. Let's let Tulsi answer.
And the challenge is great because it's a deeply entrenched system. I think where I find hope and opportunity is that through the transparency and frankly the power of new media and social media, people have a lot more access to information where they're actually seeing and connecting these dots between kind of the moneyed lobbying interests and the final result or the votes that's taken or the policy that's passed. I don't take any pat contribution.
Right here. So this goes back to my first point. This notion that people are going to have to be to some degree informed on this. There's no way to have politicians with all the incentives that are built into that political system for corruption to believe that these guys are going to be paragons of virtue when they go into the system. The assumption should be corruption, and the perspective of it should be one where the public assumes such, if that makes sense. At the very least, that needs to be part of the education system. Her point is the public is knowing more now because of the way media kind of ferrets out. And yes, on that part, I do agree with her. Let's let it keep going.
Contributions or lobbyist contributions in my campaign, purely a people-powered campaign, individual contribution being interests, and the final result or the votes that's taken or the policy that's passed. I don't take any PAC contributions or lobbyist contributions in my campaign, purely a people-powered campaign, individual contributions, and voters in this country we're seeing are starting to demand that of their candidates for Congress, of the U.S. Senate. That's really the way that we change the influence, because then there's no question about who you're accountable to. I could tell you a ton of stories about people who I know in Congress who are running, big campaigns. They record a TV ad saying what they really want to say about how pharmaceutical drug prices are increasing at exponential amounts, hurting sick people. They play the ad, and some of their big pharma PAC contributors say, "Nope, you're not gonna show that ad in public. You got to re-record it." And they did. Because, hey, they're funneling $1 million into this super PAC that's going to help run negative ads against their opponent, and they need that money to be able to win. But this is exactly what's wrong. This is what's wrong with this system. We've seen in the 2016 election, we've seen in a lot of congressional campaigns the power of people and our voices when we choose to lift those voices, both through our votes and through our contributions, and saying, hey, we're going to change this system. That's ultimately how we get through. And having strong principled leaders who are not going to bend to the wishes of those very few in Washington who've kind of held court for too long.
I like this answer. This is where Sanders answers this better. Let me explain what I mean. When she answers this question, this is one of those times where it's like, there's some questions I think she does better than Sanders, and there are questions I think Sanders is better than her. How are you going to get something accomplished in Washington? The answer to that is the president can't do anything by himself. The president can't do anything by himself. It is an extraordinarily powerful position, especially from the standpoint of foreign policy, but in domestic policy, unless he's going to sit there and assert things like a king, he's going to have to get those things passed through Congress. So what the guy's asking her is not a trivial question. If these guys are indeed bought, and she is literally making the case here and says, I know these people are bought. I've seen it with my own eyes. They will change based on what lobbyists are pushing for. And we've even seen this in the Hawaii. And yes, it was Hawaii. In an intercept where they were having dossiers on the various Democratic opponents. And the Democrats were promising these things about Medicare for all. But the dossier was saying something different. Her point is money influences behavior in politics. And of course it's going to influence behavior in politics because they need the money to get elected. It's just part of the process. Now, she's being very clear. She is not accepting PAC money. She's a people-powered campaign. So it's fair enough. But she is making the point that, look, that's a difficult problem to deal with. This is where Sanders is better because Sanders makes this argument. You need a people-powered revolution. That's why he goes with this notion of a public or people's revolution, a political revolution. Because it's dollars or pitchforks. How are you going to get this guy to move? This guy has a ton of cash in his pocket that is weighing him down to the ground like Thor's hammer. How do you get that dinosaur to get out of the way so you can get some policy that's in public interest? He has to lose. Or he has to be terrified that he is going to lose. There's no two ways about it. What she's saying here in her Tulsi Gabbard kind of really dullish way is you need a public revolution in order to force politicians into positions that they wouldn't otherwise be in or force them out of their seats. I agree with her, even though it's put in a pretty mild way. Let's go with the next one. So the next one deals with the notion of impeaching Trump. And this is the one that I love the most out of all of this.
Charles. So, I wanted to ask you on the oversight authority and with President Trump, refusing to comply with all subpoenas.
Yeah.
What enforcement authority or power does the House have in the end to not only be able to exercise your oversight role, but actually reassert yourself as a co-equal branch of government? It just seems like it's kind of stalled.
Yeah. And
the president seems to be winning this, conflict between the executive and the House.
Yeah. The oversight investigations that have been going on.
The impeachment argument is always the argument that sticks in my craw. Like, royally sticks in my craw. I'm sorry, just for a momentary aside. I don't like Donald Trump either. I don't. I guarantee you I don't. My value set and his value set in no way matches one iota. Can't stand it. But George Bush invaded multiple countries actually, resulting in the death of over 1 million people, not to mention was directly responsible for the creation of ISIS, which essentially took over nearly 2 countries, beheading, raping, and pillaging the various areas of the Middle East, setting it on fire. Obama comes in with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. George Bush, at this point, had also owned up to the fact that he said, damn right, waterboarding was essentially owning up to torture, which, if nothing else, is literally against the law. At that point, the president was out of office. So this notion of, well, you can't indict a sitting president. Fine, he's not sitting anymore. How do you tell me that you're looking forward, but you're not looking back on something that heinous, that's severe, that's serious? But you're going after Trump on this. Like, it comes across as overt politics, which has a certain stink to it. It does. You say that the guy was working with the Russians in order to cheat Hillary Clinton. And this spurs an investigation that literally could have taken down the president. This ends up being a conspiracy theory, an utter hoax. Whether the Russians had something to do with putting Facebook and Twitter ads or not, maybe, maybe not. Even if they did, I got to be honest, I don't particularly care. But my point is, that was the assertion. And that assertion ends up being wrong. And then they say he was getting in the way of us finding out that there was nothing to find out. If you want to say that Trump is corrupt, okay, I could believe it. If you want to say that he's doing something nefarious, okay. I agree with you, he's horrible. But I don't see it. I'm sorry, I don't see it. If you say you have some kind of banking issue with him, fair enough. If you say the emollients clause, if you can prove it, fair enough. If you say you got something that he's doing that is utterly and entirely corrupt, fair enough. But the stuff with the Russian stuff and trying to impeach with, this just seems, I strongly suspect that the American public is going to look at this and think this is overtly and entirely political. And while 30% of the country may be okay with you doing this, the other part of the country is going to either not care or look at this in a particular light. I'm sorry, it's one thing if you caught him. You didn't get him with anything on this case. At the very least, not with the original inciting issue. I want her to talk about this because she hits on a very particular point that I think it's extraordinarily important to make known. You don't have to like Trump to kind of look at this stuff from a larger perspective of being not attached to one of the two parties. What George Bush did was infinitely worse. I'm sorry, what George Bush did was infinitely worse. And the Democratic Party didn't seem to care one iota. And now you're going after Trump. So it's like you didn't care about the million dead, but you care about something that Trump was doing, this impeding an investigation that ultimately said that there was nothing to see. Okay, good luck with that. I strongly suspect Nancy Pelosi was right in her hesitation for picking up this particular issue, but she got bulldozed by the incentive structure built in these guys trying to get to the left of Sanders, because the only thing they need to try to get through is the primaries, which is more important to them than the main election. Let's hear Tulsi answer this. I like your answer.
Will continue to go on, I think shines a light in transparency and forces these issues to be reckoned with in the public square. But ultimately, the power that Congress has is the power of the purse strings when it comes right down to it. Obviously, this is why elections matter so much, so that we do actually have this co-equal branch of government that's holding an administration accountable. It's tough, though. I mean, I so much of these subpoenas are going ignored. People are not respecting the role that all of us have as members of Congress in just showing up and having that public transparency. As far as the legal mechanisms, I'm not well versed on all of them, but given how many of these things have been going ignored, even an impeachment vote or holding in contempt, like ultimately at a practical level, what real result will that bring? These guys are not going to lose their jobs. It's not going to happen. The Senate's not going to cooperate. But if we do our jobs in the House where the budget originates, where these appropriations bills originate, that's ultimately the power that Congress has.
Do you favor impeachment?
I think that ultimately, if we think about what's best for the country, impeachment will further tear our country apart.
Yes. Like, and I get the Democrats don't think that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I think that's a really big deal because I think we're going in a dark place. And, this starts, if you think back to Newt Gingrich and the way Newt Gingrich used to get out there and he would rail and bitch and complain and he would vilify the Democratic Party in this way. It created a mean-spiritedness in the way that these guys did politics. When Obama took office and they decided to be unilateral against Obama, that is horrendous. Because Obama would take positions that were essentially moderate from the standpoint of Republican circles, and Republican Party would be, nope, we're against it. Even though we were for it during the election, we're against it completely now that you've said it. The moment that you utter it, we're against it. Even the TPP, which would be something that Republicans would typically love, they were like, nope, we don't want to talk. Because from our objective, we don't want to give you any wins. If you get any wins that make you look good, we don't want to make you look good one iota. Now, that's a horrible scorched earth strategy, because at that point, the goal is not politics from the standpoint of getting things accomplished for the country. The goal is entirely, I'm just going to stop and make the other guy look as bad as I can possibly make the other guy so we can try to take power. And while we're making him look as bad as possible, we're going to say, look how bad you look. Now, this doesn't absolve Obama one iota, because, let's stop pretending that the presidency is, this non-powerful position. You can see in the way that Donald Trump is used in the presidency, despite, him being horrendous, that it does have leverage and power in that particular position. And that's not even using it from the bully pulpit stage. I mean, yeah, Trump goes out and has hate rallies, but I'm talking about this notion of galvanizing a public with a very specific goal in mind, and doing that to the entirety of the country. Like, that's something different. That's something different. Yeah, this is going to be divisive. And you have this tit for tat that takes place, where Republicans do it, and now Democrats look and think, well, anything that I do to this person is perfectly legit. It's like killing a Nazi. Because you did it to my guy first, I can now do it to you. In which case, both people come up with reasons on why it's okay to behave in this way, and this is just the typical way of politics. Tit for tat. I was having this conversation with my mom, and I was making the point to her that tit for tat is a necessary process. And she says, no, that's so childish. And I was like, what is the alternative to it? You're engaging with someone, and that one is trying to do something that is utterly horrendous from the standpoint that you find it. She said, well, I walk away. Well, you realize walking away is the weapon that you're using. That's the weapon you're most comfortable with. Yeah, but that's not really doing it. Yeah, you're removing yourself from that individual's presence. That you're doing something. That's still an action. Like, you're walking away because you want to inflict some sort of damage on that person by your absence. Whether you're getting angry and engaging or whether you're not engaging, it's ultimately, for the most part, the same thing. It's just the weapon that the person uses. My point is, if a person is imposing their will upon you and they're doing something that's horrendous, what do you do? Do you allow them to do it, or do you do something in response? And if you allow them to do that, isn't them just at that point having a certain degree of domination over you? It's not that it's awesome. It's more so it's the only thing that you have at your disposal. By the same token, there's a larger perspective of this, of tit for tat can also damage an entire system. Like, tit for tat from the standpoint of, if everybody stays cool, everybody is cool. If everybody doesn't, then the entire thing goes to shit. That's the downside. There are some situations that the individual, regardless of how good they are, can be put in, that there is no win. Like, one individual can destroy the system. If you are a paragon of virtue, let's say you're a Starfleet officer and there's a guy in a phone booth with a knife, does it really matter that you're a paragon of virtue? What situation are you going to be put in? If you have to rip his teeth out or rip his throat out with your teeth, yeah, that's an undignified position for you to be in, but that position wasn't necessarily entirely of your doing. You don't have full control over everything that happens around you. Meaning, it doesn't matter necessarily if you're going to be a paragon of virtue if the other guy is going to have a knife. Tulsi Gabbard's point here is well taken. We can't keep doing the back and forth thing. It's going to collapse the entirety of the system itself. It's going to rip the country apart. And impeaching this president is going to essentially give reason for the other Republicans in the country to go after the Democratic president, not caring whether or not there's reason to go after the Democratic president. It creates a tit for tat. I agree with her on that. How you get out of that, though, is less clear to me. It's less clear. I would say whether this is less clear or not, I agree with her on that point. And maybe this goes back to the people power thing, that you need kind of, this is a community effort. This is not an effort for the individual. You need to get a winning majority and have that winning majority deliver items to kind of calm the populace, if that makes sense. Let's hear finish, because she goes further into this, because the guy gets into this notion that he wants impeachment and he believes impeachment is a good thing. And if I can find it, there we are.
I think it's important for the country to defeat Donald Trump in 2020 and to make our case to voters to make that decision. So there's no question, there's no doubt about the direction the American people want to go in this country. Otherwise, in my view, we're just going to keep relitigating us versus them that began in 2016, and it's not going to do anything in helping us actually address whether it's foreign policy, healthcare, all of these domestic issues that really are impacting people in their everyday lives. And that's something that really struck me as I've been out on the road for the last several months in the early states and in different communities. Prior to the Mueller report being released in April, in the previous 5 months, let's say, I got one question about the Mueller report. One question. So it was consuming the news cycle in Washington every single day, not at all what people are thinking about out in their communities. And what they feel like is, why aren't you guys listening to us? Why aren't you paying attention to us?
This is Sanders' message, right? I mean, and what she's saying here is absolutely right. When back during, I don't remember the exact year, but I was young. I was a kid at the time. I was 17. I wasn't a kid. 17, 16, 17, 18. And I remember I was in the hospital. I was extremely ill. And we were in the middle of a hurricane. Like it was so bad that the hospital, the lights in the hospital went off. Richmond needed water brought into the country, into the county, into the city. And I remember my mom was telling me, she said, I was driving here and I was listening to the radio station and I was listening to these guys just kind of prattle on. And she says, I got so angry at them because I thought to myself, my kid is sick and you're talking about this nonsense. What Tulsi Gabbard just said there is basically the exact same thing. That little drama that was taking place where my mom was like, these guys are talking about nonsense. That drama is being played out in one household after the next all across the country on various issues. It may not necessarily be medical. Maybe it's not somebody's kid sick. Maybe somebody's kid is in jail. Maybe somebody's mom is ill and they have to, work and take care of the relative. Maybe somebody's, whatever the drama is that is affecting their individual life, where there are socioeconomic conditions that apply to it, or for that matter, political issues that apply, where the political instrument is completely tone deaf to. Like it's like a tin ear, where their main issues are not necessarily being attended to. And by the way, it's not entirely political either. Media. Because what she's saying here is essentially the thing that the media has been consumed with is the thing that the public doesn't care about. Like, I took my wife, this was when she was working at one of the other companies, and I dropped her off, and the woman at the checkout counter, we were having lunch, and they had on like the news, and she was like, God, they're still talking about Trump. This woman was inundated with it, and that was months ago. Real things, the things that tangibly affect your life. My mom can't stand Trump. And one day, in having a conversation, I just bluntly said, but think of all the things that plague you. If Trump gets impeached, would it affect you one way or the other? Like, if somebody came to you and said Trump got impeached, would you know other than them telling you Trump got impeached? Like, will you still have this bill or that bill? Will they still be coming after you for this payment? Will you still be sitting with that person? Will your brother or sister still be having their financial difficulties? Would your life change? And of course the answer is no. It wouldn't matter one iota, one way or the other. Wouldn't matter. Her point should be well taken. The things that affect people's lives, real things, is not being attended to in the political space and in the media, especially if you're talking about like mainstream media, always includes something to do with a noun, a verb, and Trump. Democrats, you better listen to Pelosi, man. She was giving you fair warning.
That's not what we're dealing. That's not what keeps us up at night. And I think that's so important for us, as Democrats, as a party, but really for the country, that we've got to get back to focusing on, hey, we've got real problems that we need to address. We've got to work together and find ways to do that.
And Charles, I've heard that from at least 7 congressmen and women around the country. No one asks about impeachment or Mueller in their local districts at all. And Tulsi made that point when we interviewed her a few weeks ago as well. It was a very powerful point that it just shows a disconnect between the Beltway and the rest of the country. We had here about, Joe, what was it, a couple weeks ago, we had Antonio Delgado.
They interviewed Tulsi. What did they interview Tulsi for? Oh, did they interview before they had this particular? Maybe they interviewed, I guess, before they had this sitting. All right, let's keep going.
Who represents kind of central upstate New York. It's a rather Republican-leaning district, but he was able to win in 2018. His top 2 issues in his district, and I think they're maybe, hopefully, probably a microcosm for the national, were healthcare.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the one that we found most surprising was climate change.
Yeah.
And he said most Republicans were asking me about climate change because they were farmers.
Interesting.
So that was just like, that really threw the room off a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you have similar experiences about those 2 issues, healthcare and climate change.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the flooding that we're seeing across the Midwest. We've been out and been visiting with folks in those communities, towns of a population size of 500 people.
Most people aren't farmers. Most people aren't farmers. The climate change thing, go at it at your own peril, man. You have to attend to people's needs first. One of the things that they found was that when people's income rose and their standard of living increased, then they started caring more about the planet. And that makes all the sense in the world. Of course, you can care a little bit more about the planet when your kid is going to be fed and when you have a house that you're going to be under and your security to some degree is intact. When your security is not intact, of course, you're going to care about the things that are in front of you first. Like, I need something to stuff in my gullet and I need something to, need somewhere to live. Let her finish your question. My only point is saying the climate change thing. It's an important issue. It is something that needs to be pushed. And I know this sounds weird, even though it's more important probably than anything else because it's a catastrophic issue. It's something that you can't necessarily get to directly. You have to get to it through other things. I hope that makes sense. Because otherwise you're going to lose people. Let's keep going.
Entire town is gone. It's completely wiped out. Millions of dollars of their grain that they had in store. See the I don't know what they call it, but the big structures that they hold the grain in exploded and just spilled out. I mean, and that is their income and their ability to support their families, not just this year, but next year and the following year. What to speak of the fact that they won't be able to farm for quite a while. So it is, I mean, when you look at these practical impacts, there are more people saying, well, I can't attribute this to anything else but that. What are we doing? What should we be doing? Both to build resilience, but also to look at how we are farming, look at how we're living, look at where we're getting our fuel from. What are the contributors to climate change, and what do we need to address that both here, and how do we work with other countries to make the kind of change globally that ultimately will be necessary if we really want to make an impact.
One more thing on impeachment. I've heard that also, that, in districts and in, other states, people rarely get the question on impeachment. And in fact, in New York and San Francisco, you get it a lot.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
My issue on impeachment isn't that we should run on it in 2020 as a campaign issue. I think that's a huge mistake. The issue is a much bigger one, which is if we don't do something more extreme and hold him accountable, we're just setting a precedent, even if we win in 2020, that future presidents will be completely immune from oversight. I think it's a bigger issue. That's why I don't think you have to run on it, but I think that the House should absolutely move forward with it and do their job, but not make it a campaign issue if possible.
Yeah.
Seconded.
Yeah.
It was seconded? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm telling all the 2020 candidates that. I think a lot of candidates mistake those of us that are hugely in favor of impeachment immediately with, we're telling you to run on it. We're not doing that. We're saying it's a much bigger issue. It's part of the day-to-day job and one of the biggest responsibilities of the House. To do that and then run your campaign as you are.
Yeah.
But there are political
on other issues
consequences.
that matter.
What people are worried about on the other side of the point is that the political consequences are so stark that you basically tee him up, right? Because the Senate's never going to do it, and then maybe you have a repeat of what happened with Clinton, where people actually, public perception switched, right? So that's a concern, I think. But, I hear your point.
The narrative that there will be blowback on the Democrats is really a Republican narrative,
right?
And Clinton didn't refuse to comply with every single subpoena.
Yeah.
It's a very different situation today.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Fair point.
No, it's a point well taken that really does have to do with accountability. I think one of my major concerns, in addition to what I mentioned, is that this will, even though we're saying, well, we're not going to run on it, that this will consume the United States Congress.
Two things. It doesn't matter if it's a Republican talking point. It can be a Republican talking point and simultaneously be true. That's a Republican talking point, okay? Are you going to have a rebuttal? That's not a rebuttal at all. Yes, there will be blowback. I can't believe you don't believe there will be blowback on something like that. That's astonishing that you believe that. So yeah, it can be a Republican talking point and possibly be true. On the second point, Trump is not Clinton. Trump is gross. So I don't have this thought that, Trump's popularity is going to, explode through the roof because these guys are going after him. I do think Trump will probably run against it. And I think it is farcical to believe that it won't consume Congress and thereby consuming whoever is running for the presidency of the United States. And however goes impeachment to some degree is going to go with that president. That president is going to be stuck with what is taking place. He's going to have an opinion on it. They're going to be asking him about it. Whatever comes up is going to be, it is going to consume the presidency at a time when really, depending on who you are, those are not the things you want to be talking about. Trump is one of the most beatable presidents in our history. You don't have to do this. Like, this is so extreme for somebody like Trump. Let's keep going.
For the next however long it would go. And then there won't be any other issue that's brought up. There won't be any other issue that's addressed. We can introduce legislation, we can do these other things, but it will become an all-consuming thing that will be inescapable. So, I mean, you bring up a valid point, though, about accountability. I think this is the kind of conversation that we should be having. I think the problem that I've seen in Washington is statements made by different leaders in Congress have been all about the political calculation, which for me, for everyday Americans, are like, that seriously, I'm sick and tired of you guys playing politics. Talk about what's real. And so for making an argument about accountability, we should have that argument and have that discussion rather than saying, well, we should or shouldn't for political reasons. And then Trump and Republicans saying, well, they should or shouldn't because it's going to help or hurt us. So I think we've got to get to the heart of the problem and address that.
Odessa?
The funny part is, her friend is the one that brought up the political calculation. Her friend was like, whoa, that's, there's a political consequence to that. Tulsi Gabbard's like, fuck that shit. I don't disagree with this because of the political calculation. I disagree with this because it's like, I had an alcoholic grandfather. A complete alcoholic. The worst person I think I've known in my life. Evil, vindictive, drunk. Like, in the extreme scale. My perspective of what it takes to be addicted to something is way off. Like, and I didn't realize that until I got later on in life where I was like, see, to me, this is being, an alcoholic, but really, this is being an alcoholic. It throws your scale off. I'm saying that living through a situation where there was a George Bush throws my scale off. I don't understand how a Democratic Congress with a Democratic president doesn't go after a Republican president that literally dragged this country into war and spent, $7 trillion and 4,000 lives doing it. Not to mention the million on the other side. Like, I don't understand that. And so then you tell me, well, we got to impeach Trump. And you scream for accountability. Now, I was one of those people that was screaming for accountability over the last guy. I was screaming for it on the last guy, the one that actually got a bunch of people murdered. But I agree basically with her opinion here. It's like, look, Trump should be beating the ballot box, not through this. If you were part of that 30% that put Trump in office, what are you to think of this process? And hey, maybe the Democrats don't care what they think of this process. In the same way they didn't care what the Sanders supporters thought when they were trying to cheat Sanders. But that turned around and bit them in the ass. And I suspect that this will do the exact same thing. There are political consequences for doing stuff like this. You're trying to take the guy out of office in this kind of obscure way, as opposed to just beating him in the ballot box. This entire argument has been made to make Trump into this grotesque goblin figure that is somehow different than other presidents. And because he's somehow different than other presidents, the means that you deal with him can be different. But it's nonsense. He's hard, right? If you took Trump out this office today and put in Mike Pence, the policies that would be enacted would be almost the same, with the exception of maybe being okay with the TPP. Just saying. There's one last point on this one, and there was somebody that interceded. I saw a super chat, and I think I even saw Trudy. Strong and principled as fuck. I like that, Robert. Stop whataboutism. Children are dying. What do you mean whataboutism? Robert Pouquet-Ray, Tulsi quoted, guys, fuck this shit. Yeah, fuck this, fuck that. Yeah, I know, right? I know. Trudy, I'm not. Tulsi is one of my favorites. I don't get the issue. Tulsi is one of my favorites. I'm not dinging her. At least I might have missed something. Jamal is right. He is a Hindu banker farmer bro. Yeah, and I'm not. Jamal gets hung up on being right. Yes, I do, because it matters. It matters. It matters. It's a big deal. My wife has made this argument. She was like, you'd rather be right, lose a friend than otherwise. It matters. It matters a big deal. Like, her and I would have conversations, and there would be sticking points where I'm like, well, look, before we move on, can we at least establish that this part is right? In which case, she gets pissed off and doesn't want to have the conversation. Yes, it matters. There are things. If both of us are having a disagreement and we're trying to earnestly, come to some kind of strict, some come to Jesus, some resolution to it, we should be able to establish the elements that were right and the elements that were wrong. And so, yeah, it matters. I think it matters. But I got to be honest, this doesn't matter to me, if that makes sense. I know that sounds bizarre. It matters. This doesn't matter to me. I have to do this story again because I fucked up the first time. The only reason I am doing this story a third time is because the mistake was made the first time. Overall, I don't think this changes Tulsi's behavior. I mean, granted, it's one of those things where you would have to kind of, you'd have to always keep a check on. But if this was anybody else, let's say for the moment that this was Buttigieg, would you take Buttigieg's word that, and by the way, I'm not saying she's taking any additional money or anything, but the argument here is the Wall Street thing. I'm not going to rehash. But yeah, I do have a thing about trying to be right. The fact is, Jamal had them said they were suspiciously close to the Wall Street actor. If later facts give a picture that says it's okay, then it's okay. This says Jamal is honest. I got to be honest. This is not a story that I even wanted to do. It's not a story I want to do. I like Tulsi. The optics of this is just bad. It's not a reality story, if that makes sense. It's not like I don't believe there's a there in the strictest sense of, she's prostrating herself to get Wall Street cash. It's just so happened she has a friend that works on Wall Street. The guy's like an Indian banker. It just is what it is. People are starting to talk about something I've been discussing for 2 years, that Trump never had any intention of running for a second term and would ditch out. Oh, I don't think that. No way. I don't think that, Garden. I don't think that. You think that? No money was requested to attend the breakfast, or it was not a Wall Street fundraiser. Oh, I see. Donations were collected. Oldman did ask people, go to the website. Yeah, he asked for donations. I understand. Your issue is, it's not a fundraiser. It's a breakfast. Okay. But come on. Come on. If Joe Biden was going to meet a gentleman from Wall Street, and Joe Biden was just there giving a talk, and during the course of that talk, at the end of it, Joe Biden, the guy says, look, if you guys can go help Joe Biden out. And somebody on the lefty website comes out and says, Joe Biden went to see Wall Street. And Joe Biden says, come on, man. I'm not going to see Wall Street. I was just there to talk to him for breakfast. Would you buy that? And I don't like to continuously defend this position, but I just want to make a point. Will you buy that? That the entirety of the communications between the two had nothing to do with, you have a bunch of cash. Can you get your friends to also try to give me a bunch of cash? The request at the end, do you honestly believe that the request at the end was the only request that was made? I don't know if Tulsi's campaign has banked like that where she wouldn't ask him. I think it would be weird if she didn't ask him. I think part of the reason that the guy was even asking at the end was because he has friends that may have ends. I don't see anything nefarious with this, because that's my issue. The Democrats want to impeach Trump for something that they're not guilty of. They'll have to fabricate the charge, and it worked out great with the Russiagate thing. The Russiagate didn't make it. The Russiagate wasn't working. It didn't get across the finish line. And that's the weird part about the impeachment stuff. What are you impeaching him for? Like, obstruction for something that didn't exist? Like, this seems utterly absurd. When my mom, she has this tendency to, she was like, you sound like you like Trump. And it's like, it's not that I sound like I like Trump. It's just, you are hitting him in ways that I don't think are all that fair. And she would make a point about, well, they did that to Clinton, which gets to Tulsi's point of, you're creating this back and forth between the two sides. Now, the problem here is, if one party stops, but the other party continues, then you're back where you started in somewhat of a worse scenario. Tit for tat, in this case, is almost necessitated in order to prevent that situation where one side dominates. And like I said, I don't quite know how to get out of that. I don't know how to get out of that. All right. I give 15 to 20% chance Trump doesn't run for a second term. Oh, I wish I knew how to factor that out. That's fascinating. I don't think his ego would allow him to step out of it. Like just his ego alone. Not to mention, how much work is Trump actually doing? I mean, Trump has a paycheck. He's delegated responsibility to essentially the governing to the people around him. He's out to lunch. There may be a few things. Dude, Corday Yale, God damn it, you're killing me. You should not have covered this at all in the first place if you didn't see the SALT conference with Ahmed. She talked about bringing up Glass-Steagall. Again, I don't quite understand the issue. I don't understand your issue. It's as if the reality of this bothers you. Nobody is saying that she's bought. Your issue is that the Wall Street has certain connotations associated with it. My issue is, what I am saying is technically true. She is literally sitting with the guy from Wall Street. I don't get your issue. It's fact. Obstruction means hiding something that did exist. Mazza versus Crowder, pick a side. I don't have to pick a side in Mazza versus Crowder. And I don't think it's a Mazza versus Crowder thing. J. Scott. I mean, it is, but it's not. I mean, Steven Crowder is an asshole. He just is. And I think people recognize Steven Crowder as an asshole. I think that's to some degree shtick to be that guy. Should they silence him? Fuck no. I don't have to like him. And by no means should you have a situation where you're harassing anybody. And whether you're harassing somebody for being black, gay, Jewish, Muslim, whatever, that should be a foul, in general. So I don't know if the pick a side stuff. I mean, my side is, for the most part, just you shouldn't be able to harass people in that way. Should YouTube take the extraordinary step of demonetizing in this kind of ham-handed way? No. Should they demonetize Crowder? No. There are going to be people out there who like listening to that stupid shit like that. Harassment is a foul for me. And that may run afoul of YouTube's policies in general, if that makes sense. Like, if you are going after somebody, and I know Joe Rogan did this thing where he was having a conversation with Pacman, and he was bringing up this kind of commonality between the way Cedar goes after Crowder or goes after pretty much anybody. But there's a difference there. I mean, I to some degree agree with Pacman on this. Going after somebody for their sexuality or their gender or their race or, there's certain pretty disgusting aspects to that as a society we kind of decide that's a no-go, that's a fail. You taking on a political ideology, however, seems fair game to me. And if your political ideology is racist and sexist and homophobic, etc., that seems fair game to me. I mean, there's a difference in freedoms, if that makes sense. Like, this freedom is not expressed as this kind of absolute free-form space. Your freedom is always going to infringe on somebody else's. This notion of you being able to be racist infringes upon a person living in a society where they don't have to deal with somebody being racist in an overt way. So it's not me taking a side per se. I don't think the side thing is necessarily helpful. I care more so about the outcomes. YouTube, there are some people that were demonetized that were history teachers because they were teaching history about Adolf Hitler. And it was like, whoa, this is too far, in which they demonetized those videos. There were other people that they were demonetizing that were journalists. Like, it got absurd in the way that they went about doing this demonetization. And I even saw the back and forth between Tracy and Humans Report. These guys got into a big fight over this stuff. I'm not down with the censorship stuff. I don't like it. Yeah, I'm not down on board for it. Fuck these platforms. We need to break them up. That's the lesson we do. Garden, the question becomes, how do you do that? I mean, Jesus Christ, man, here. We've given up our comments. Like, that's what we're talking about. Hate speech doesn't exist. That's a lie. That's a lie. I don't believe that at all. Look, we need to figure. In this odd way, we've warmly sunk into this notion that these companies are free speech zones, when really they're not. They're private companies that essentially profit off of the technology, the content that we provide to the platforms. Our engagement is essentially is their profit. But at any time, the rule can change. They can change the rule tomorrow. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, the way that YouTube has named the rule set pretty much any political video can be taken down as being somehow offensive to the rule. But again, the rules are written in a way that allows them maximum latitude in taking down a particular video. A channel can essentially be demonetized over pretty much anything, especially if it's dealing with political or newsworthy content. I kept saying the only way to get around that is to have some level of power to the people who are making the channels, meaning the content providers. We're just talking about a capitalistic system in an electronic sphere where you have employers and employees. In this case, the employees are pretended as if they're not employees. They're called contractors. And because they're independent contractors, the rule set is different. So the company can essentially make their rules whatever they want to make their rules. The employees have no power within the context of this distribution of power. They can say, you guys can kick rocks and you can leave, but there is nobody else other than YouTube. They're the only company that does what they do and pay for it. So they're the only gig that's going. That's a no-win scenario. Like, there is no exit. There is no door. So when YouTube demonetized many of those platforms on a whim, those people lost their living. That shouldn't happen. That should not happen. That should not happen. Like, that's astonishing. And there's nobody to talk to. So there's no individual to go to explain, no, I'm a history teacher. You should be going after me. Mazza was apologetic to some of the people. It's like, oh, I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't mean for this to happen. Look, I don't know the individual of it. I don't know whether he was being harassed. I don't know what he means by harassed, like his level of thing. It's like Michael Tracy saying, what's her name, knocked him out the way. He was being overly dramatic. So I don't know. My point is this. By their accounts, this was taking place for the last 2 years. I don't know why YouTube decided to just act all of a sudden. And in acting all of a sudden, act in this ham-handed way. And they tend to continuously act in ham-handed ways despite the fact that they're talking about people's well-being. There needs to be a counterbalance to this. There needs to be some rule set that's for the people who are working on this to not necessarily be under the thumb of this. It's kind of like a code book of laws of sorts that they will be governed by and not necessarily be able to just knock out in a whim. But as it stands, yeah, they've destroyed people's lives in this. Michael Tracy cries when he takes... That's fucked up and funny, Jay Scott. Michael Tracy cries when he takes a shit. Plum or dumb. It's true. They do it out of fear of lost revenue. When other thing would there be for a company to fear? Certainly not loss of good reputation. MT, to qualify impeachment application with political comfort is dishonest behavior. Obstruction is a crime. War crimes also, not just. Trump possibly guilty. Congress got to debate. I get it. You're talking about the whataboutism stuff. What is unequal justice? Right? Is that a fair question? And if justice is selective, can you call it justice at all? Meaning, if you're trying to say that impeaching Trump is some kind of justice, that Congress needs to act because it's a just thing for Congress to act. But Congress doesn't act in other situations where Congress is supposed to act. How is that justice? It seems that Congress is being pretty selective in the people who he wants to go after versus the people it doesn't want to go after. My issue with this boils down to Congress had the opportunity to impeach a president for essentially war crimes. Not to mention spending trillions of dollars of revenue and lying the country into a war. Now, that's putting it politely. And you could look and create an evidentiary case and everything else to make your case. They didn't even do that. Do you realize a million people died in that war? We're still fighting that war 18 years later. You might call it whataboutism, but that's a big fucking whataboutism. Like, that's a massive indifference. How is that justice when it seems to be extraordinarily selective? And is selective justice justice at all? It's not, again, that I like Trump. It's this notion that it's obstruction on something That didn't occur. The Democratic Party had already decided what they wanted to do the moment that this investigation was taking place. This route had already been planned. And there were going to be some people that pushed for this. And by the way, there may be some true believers in this. Fair enough. But keep in mind, they're true believers in a conspiracy theory that didn't exist. And now they're trying to get this kind of ancillary charge for something that didn't exist. No, I'm not for this. I think this is insane. I think it's utterly insane. I think it's just as bad as them going after Bill Clinton for a blowjob. That's what I think. Forget obstruction for Russia nonsense. We know Trump is taking bribes and doing favors, violating a emoluments clause. Okay, didn't get him for that. I was mad Bush and Obama weren't impeached, but not if for them. Well, now, then what? Look, I get it. The argument is always you have to start somewhere. The problem is that's always... Look, if I honestly believe that this was being done in an apolitical way, that the goal of this wasn't to remove a president out of office so they wouldn't have to, to ding the other party in this. If I believe that this was being done in a statesmanlike way with the country itself, with the best interest in mind, that, these vultures who are trying to get elected and try to take the other guy out of office, if I believe these, saliva dripping from their mouths vultures, as they tell me that, no, you can totally trust me, I don't have any ulterior motives at all. If if I believe that process was apolitical, then yeah, fair enough. But I don't believe that at all. There are a lot of people out there with pitchforks. There are two impulses. From one impulse, you have those people who think we can hurt Trump by impeaching Trump. So for the last year that Donald Trump is running in the election, he's going to be fighting impeachment. That's one thought. Meaning it looks bad. Regardless of no president wants to be impeached. Regardless of what he says, no president wants to be impeached. So in the year that he's supposed to be running for the presidency of the United States, if he's also fighting impeachment, that makes his life that much more doubly miserable. We're going to ding him. We're going to make him look bad. We're going to put attrition damage on him for the entirety of the presidency. And they were successful in doing so. And far more clever than Republicans ever were dealing with Bill Clinton. Look into the Ukrainian stuff. It is astonishing. Look, my main issue is this. It is extraordinarily divisive. And you didn't have him for the thing that you went after him for. So trying to impeach him for it looks absurd. It looks absurd. One track of the party thinks that you can ding him while he's running for presidency, making it look bad and making him have a harder time. But there's another body of thought that says he is going to point to this as a witch hunt and say the entire presidency that he's had has been under a witch hunt, and say that you didn't have what you said you had on him, and in not having what you said you had on him, you tried to take him out of office. Like, which one is right? I don't know. But is that really something you want to try to find out when really the basic path to beating Trump is Trump lied to you and betrayed you and he sold you out? And by the way, some of the candidates, like Elizabeth Warren, she's taking this path because she wants to get a little bit more, limelight. Her campaign was dead in the water at one point. She saw screaming impeachment and, what do you know? But Elizabeth Warren was promising any and everything, trying to get anybody's attention. Reparations right here. I'm for reparations right here. Impeachment? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I can get with that too. Yeah, let's do that. She was for anything. Didn't matter what it was. She was just trying to get some kind of limelight. And she's been able to get that limelight now. And MSNBC loves her to death. I think she's the corporate choice. I think she's the person who they can put out and say, all right, how about her? Not that fucking Bernie Sanders. What about her? She's good enough. She'll keep our war machine going. She still is a capitalist. She's going to give a little bit of our money away, but she's a capitalist. Personally, I don't think you know what you're going to get with Elizabeth Warren if she gets in office. I think she's a wild card. I think she'll tell you whatever she has to tell you. Even in the local elections or the primaries. this whole shtick about not taking, PAC money and all this other stuff, that goes away the moment that she gets elected. I mean, if she gets to the primaries. So, just saying. Just saying. Shane Wolf, just enjoying the conversation. Thank you, Shane. Thanks, man. Justice if elites don't play because elites never pay. Shane, thank you, man. I appreciate it. They're killing us with this stuff, man. They're talking about the Jesus Christ, it slipped out of my mind. There's a word for it. The apocalypse, Twitter apocalypse, the YouTube apocalypse, or the ad apocalypse, or whatever they call it. Like, it's aggravating. Like, I don't think my show, if I'm being honest, is all that radical. I mean, I may be extreme. If you're having a conversation with me, I'm like, yeah, get rid of cash. We need a society that gets rid of cash. Or I may say certain industries need to be nationalized because I don't believe those things should be in private hands. Vital industries to our national interests should be in the hands of us. Like, so there may be things that you completely disagree with me on, but the show, for the most part, is not, out there. It's not the Venus Project, even though there are a lot of that stuff I agree with. Where am I going with this? Even with this show, though, like, it gets hit with that stuff. Like, I could do a show where I'm talking about something that took place, let's say China and Russia forming a military pact. I might even do a show on D-Day, demonetized. This video may get demonetized just because if I say something about Tulsi being anti-war, demonetized. Like, it's insane. Like, in the way they ding you for this stuff. And then they would say for the first 1,000 you don't get anything, and then after that they will review the video, that type of stuff. It just puts pressure on your bottom line. So Shane, Trudy, all of you guys that's helping, even when you guys completely disagree with me, I appreciate it. Thank you. Tulsi quoted me, guys. Fuck this shit. Yeah, she's like, fuck this shit. Justice if elites don't pay because elites never pay. No, Trudy, I agree with you. I guess the problem is somewhat of a deeper problem then. How do you ever, fuck, man, this is back to the tit for tat. Like, tit for tat works providing there's a mind towards the larger part of the system. The whole point of it, I need to put as much pain on the individual to let them know that they can't impose their will on me without some level of pain. It's the reason why Iran wants a nuclear weapon. It's the reason why North Korea wants a nuclear weapon. It's the reason why all of those weaker countries want a nuclear weapon. The thought is, I can't be bullied if I have the means to defend myself. So I get it. But this is somewhat of a chess problem. And there's no good answer. Because one person can corrupt the system. Imagine for the moment you had Starfleet. Let's say Next Generation. And you have an alien species run by a fascist regime. Let's say the Nazis evolved and won the war and created a fascistic regime that eventually goes out into space. I know this is a wild one. How does Star Trek interact with Nazis? Like, I hope you get my point. However good Starfleet is almost, it matters, but their behavior is not the sole determining factor of the outcome of the system. An element in the system can go rogue and corrupt the entirety of the system. I guess I'm saying, yes, one individual can be fucking awesome, but that person still has to deal with an outside world that could be horrendous. And sometimes that person being optimum is still going to look horrible just because of the system to which they find themselves in. I hope that makes sense. All right. Impeachment. I think there was one more, but this video has gone way, way too long. But yeah, Trudy, I don't know how you fix that. Because you're always going back and forth. I suppose you need something that comes credibility, I guess. Credibility. That's it. So you need something outside of the system that people have a certain degree of credibility in. Like, there's a loss of legitimacy in regards to the people who are coming into office. Because, like Tulsi even alludes to here, they're bought. These guys are getting money stuffed in their pockets and is, given policy back and forth depending on how they're getting paid. There's certain things they can go for. There's certain things they can't. It depends on the latitude that they're given by the people who pay. If the group says, we're not going to give you money if you're going to push this policy, then they may not push that policy. Now, the lawmaker may be able to make the argument that, look, the other guys are going to be far worse for you. This is the best I can get you, so give me money for this particular policy, in which case they may back a person that's backing a particular policy. But should your policy be dictated by people with wealth in the first place? My answer is no. It shouldn't be. It should be dictated for the masses of the public itself. The political instrument should be for us. Yes, of course, there's going to be fights between, you can call it, the proletariat and the capitalist class within the context of the back and forth. But in our case, we have a captured party system where both parties are captured by cash in this way. That needs to change. That needs to change. That fundamentally needs to change. But I don't know how you do that when it looks completely political in the way that one party goes after the other and the other party responds in kind. I suppose you would need something outside of the political instrument, like public pressure and somebody who's independent of both. This gets to the argument of third parties, but third parties are hard in the United States. But you can get somebody who looks like they're a third party person winning in the party system, like Donald Trump, for example, which is exactly what that is. Somebody who looks like they're outside the party system coming into the system, but he ended up being one of the exact same dinosaurs that were there before. But he sets, at the very least, the standard that it can happen, as gross as it is. But Trudy, I agree with you on the justice part. I do agree with you on that. Do people care about the Bible? No. No, they do not. They do not. Jamal, got to stop gerrymandering to begin with. Yeah, Dr. Singtastic. I love that name. There used to be a guy here who used to do chess. He used to run it. His name was Sonny Singh. And he used to run it out of like one of the small hotels. God, man, I used to miss those days. My mom used to take me to the chess tournaments. I used to be a kid. I was like 14, 13 years old playing in adult tournaments. I didn't play in kid tournaments until I was like 17. But at the time, I was really young. And I used to get intimidated by the adults because some of those guys were huge. Had nothing to do with their playing skill. It was just the guys were huge. Man, I remember that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that needs to take place for that to take place. But you have to start somewhere. Trudy's point is, don't you have to start somewhere? I guess my point is, if where you're starting is still where you are, you haven't really started at all. You're still part of the same process. It's kind of my point of something outside of that process that has a little bit more credibility to go in and do stuff like that. Do you trust the Democratic Party to do this in an apolitical way? The answer is no. No more than I trust the Republican Party to do it. So, you learn how Jesus used politics to trick the poor to get a kingdom, and you see the reach and influence of Rome. The influence of Rome. When is the next 420 show? I love the excessive smoke box. Smoke box. That's funny. How much money did Anna pay you to smear Tulsi? I didn't smear Tulsi. I didn't smear Tulsi. Russia consumed the public for 3 years. Impeachment will distract for years and won't work. I agree with you. I agree with you. What do you mean I'm distracting? I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. No, but I'm distracting. And by the way, I never hit Tulsi. I never hit Tulsi. Your misconceptions. My wife, I explain what I mean. My wife is about to leave the other day. And she has like a do-rag. It's not exactly a do-rag, but it looks like a do-rag. And it has these bright colors. And I'm like, and she says, what do you have to say about it? I said, I don't have anything to say about it. And I say something like, It just, you're looking like your roots or something to that effect. And she's like, you're so racist. And I was like, what do you mean I'm racist? I'm thinking Kenya. And she's thinking slavery. I'm like, see, you're associating that particular thing, that image in your head with slavery. I was associating with our trip to Kenya. This was an image thing. The image of this was me saying Tulsi meets Wall Street. And the immediate connotation is Wall Street, negative, evil, etc., etc., etc. I agree with you that Fox News was portraying this in a way that was trying to ding Tulsi, even in the way that they accounted it. I disagree with you that the story was completely false. There was a there to the story. It just wasn't the image that they were trying to portray. I mean, guys from Wall Street, for fuck's sake, I don't know what to say. That said, I don't necessarily care. Oh, Trudy, don't do that, Trudy. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's wrong. That's wrong. Jamarl gonna hear it. Yeah, she does not listen to the video. She's supposed to be studying for a test. So. Jamarl was promised an unpaid internship at TYT. She's not been smeared. She's not been smeared. For fuck's sake. You tell me. You're a congressman. And as a congressman, let's say you're of a particular origin. Let's say you're black. Let's say you're African. Let's say you're African. And as black, let's say maybe Muslim, and you're running for Congress. You're in Congress for a few seasons, and you say, you know what, I'm going to run for president. Nobody knows who you are. You have like 0% name recognition. But you have been getting on like Fox News and some of these other networks. And so you go gangbusters trying to get your name out there and get as much publicity as you possibly can. You sit down for every interview that you possibly can. You don't care if it's 3 hours. You don't go on the Jamarl Thomas show for some reason, but you go on other people's shows. And you do what you can. You get 1% in the polls going gangbusters. You barely make the amount necessary to get into the debates, but you do get into the debates, and not just get into the debates, you're ahead of most of the other people that are in the Democratic field, but you're still just 1%. You need cash. You've even sent out letters to people saying, look guys, they may change the rules, in which case we need to have more cash to make sure we get into the debate. Essentially goading people, okay, I understand that I'm on the stage, but I still need more money. So if this is the situation that you're in, and you have friends that just so happen to be Wall Street bankers. They have a ton of cash. Maybe they're not billionaires, but maybe they're millionaires. And they have friends that are also maybe Wall Street bankers. And that friend invites you to a breakfast to give a talk. Are you telling me that that friend is not going to try to get other friends to give you cash? And are you insane to not take that cash, considering that your goal in this is not necessarily to change your policies, and you need that cash in order to get elected, in order to even get on the debate stage and put up a formidable presence to try to get your ideas espoused? Meaning, even if you don't believe you can win, you still need to have enough cash to get from point A to point B to get your ideas out into the country itself and last through the debates long enough for the public to start paying attention to you. How do you turn down that cash? By the same token, in turning down that cash or accepting that cash, you also have to accept this optics of the Fox News story, Tulsi Gabbard meets Wall Street, because technically that story is correct, even though the spirit of what they're trying to get across is false. You're stuck with the headline. It's not necessarily that anything has changed in the campaign. It's not necessarily that you're being obsequious to cash. It's not necessarily that you're prostrating yourself or changing your policies. None of that has changed. You're just stuck with the headline. The headline sucks. The headline sucks. Just saying. It's just a bad look, yeah. I just think it's a bad look. I don't think there's a there to it. Tulsi can't be trusted because she doesn't know what a grain silo is. I was thinking, I was like, do you mean a silo? I was thinking the same thing. Do you mean a silo? I'm too scared of the DNC for me to donate to Tulsi, though. I'd like to. I don't know why you're scared of the DNC. I don't know why that would stop you from Tulsi's donation. In fact, in fact, not scaring me to donate to Tulsi. Look, I donated to Tulsi because I wanted to see her on the debate stage. And I want that anti-war platform out there. I want her on the debate stage with Biden, forcing him to explain himself. I want Elizabeth Warren having to explain her foreign policy. I want this notion that maybe we should stop these regime change wars to be the topic of discussion in front of the American public for one fucking moment. That's what I want. So yeah, I do want people to donate to Tulsi because I want her coffers full enough to get from point A to point B. I would love for her to be the Secretary of State for Sanders. So this is not me dinging her. I don't think I smeared her in one iota. I just reported the story as is. How am I being hit for reporting the story? An American with a Pakistani father, an Iranian mother, and a Muslim likes Tulsi Gabbard message of no more wars, especially no war with Iran. Yes, thank you. Yes. Trudy, I'm so tired. Oh, Trudy, why are you so tired? What's wrong? Contrary, Kate, no, I mostly study Kashmiri Shivaism as opposed to Varishta. And I'm probably destroying that name. Do you think she's really polling at 1%? I mean, so we know her, but I don't know if the rest of the country know her. And it's hard to get outside of your bubble, if that makes sense, like your reality box. Like, I inhale news, and my audience tends to like Tulsi Gabbard. I tend to like Tulsi Gabbard, so I tend to follow the stories associated with it because I don't think the regular media is going to do it. It's what I try to do for the audience. But I don't know if the rest of the public knows her. And with the big names in the race like Biden and Sanders, those are like the big names that people know. Once she gets on the debate stage, I think it becomes real. Like, that's when the public gets, okay, this is who this person is, and how is it shuffling out? And what is the polling after the public gets the opportunity to see the candidates? So, the polling as it stands today, I consider it somewhat up in the air. I think it crystallizes the closer you get to once you get through the debates. How can we get a message out? Jamarl wasn't reporting the story as it is, but embellishing the story to infer she was seeking donations from Wall Street. Big Unc, okay, fair enough. I'll go with that. I mean, I don't think I was embellishing the story to that degree, but if that was the connotation, fair enough. But I don't know if I was embellishing it to that degree. But if I was, fair enough. I can see the disconnect. Tulsi was singing it in a crowd yesterday. That's funny. Yes, you were, Jamal. It's on your motto. I gotta be honest. I think she is going to Wall Street to get money. To me, this seems like a literal thing. But okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't. Who do you think her friends are? I mean, who do you think that guy's friends are? And who do you think he's asking for cash from? I mean, it's even in the video. I can play it when he's asking for cash. But okay, fair enough. I agree with you on this. It's not the same thing as Biden and Buttigieg stuff. I don't think it's that. But I never thought it was that. And if my video was too strong in the other one before, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. But I never took it as a smear of Tulsi. I always have trouble closing my emoji window. She's a Democrat. Of course, she's going to Wall Street. I am Sylar. Yeah, but it's a different Sylar. Come on. Reporting it out without the facts, invited to Wall Street. She was invited to Wall Street. I don't understand what I'm getting. Jamal, don't ever apologize to the lefties. Well, it's not so much I'm apologizing to the lefties. I want the story to be right, and I want it to be communicated in a way that's accurate. But I don't think I got this story wrong. I think you guys just like Tulsi. Like if you want to say that she's not bought, I never said she was. If you want to say that she's not taking PAC money, I never said she was. If you want to say that she is, prostrating herself to these guys, I never said any of that stuff. I never said any of that stuff. First debate, June 26th and 27th. Yes, I'm covering that. I'm definitely covering that. But fair enough. Jamarl hates Tulsi and never misses a chance to denigrate her. The cash from TYT only fuels. Yeah, they don't like her, man. I really think it seems that Elizabeth Warren is the chosen candidate. I could be wrong, but look at Fox News, not Fox News, look at MSNBC, look at CNN, and look at TYT. Essentially, the mainstream media elements and the mainstream media light have chosen their person. They've chosen their person. Thank you! I defend Tulsi a lot. And not just defend her a lot. Not just defend Tulsi a lot. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. If I missed Streamlabs, my bad. Hold on. And not just defend Tulsi a lot. I always defend Tulsi. As long as what they're saying is BS. I always defend her. But just to be very clear, you will not find anything that I've said wrong on this about her. And what I mean by that is, you guys are dinging me, or some of you are dinging me for something I don't think I got wrong. But what's his name? I'm Seiler. I agree with you on the apologizing stuff. You don't apologize unless, let's say apologize, they run forever. No, Jamal, you were wrong. Where's your hero now? You're still going to shill for. And where are the Tulsi stands? Y'all going to defend it. I told you she was trash. She's boring Wall Street trash. She's not. Come on. That's a little extreme. Oh, right here. Where the fuck are the Tulsi cheerleaders now? She's done. I told you. God, man, I so disagree. And I don't know how on earth you can have a video where you're being hit from both sides. Dan Campbell, dear Tulsi, psst, don't tell anyone, but you're the best. We know that. Signed, Bernie Sanders and Anna Kasparian. Anna hates her too, man. I gotta be honest. I don't get why these people have such a being a bonnet for her. Jordan is in agreement according to the stream today. She's just a little less trustworthy now. If I, at any point in the other video, made this impression that she was similar to Joe Biden in obsequiousness to Wall Street or the way she was going for money, then I was wrong in that. I don't think I did that. But if I did that, I was wrong in that. I don't think I did that. By the same token, all of you who are taking the piss out of me, and that's a hard thing to do since I don't have kidneys, have to admit that this is taking place. And I can let you listen to the part at there where he says, please give her money. And who do you believe that he's asking to give her money? He's a Wall Street broker. If he's just asking people that he worked with and that's around him, I would imagine it would be other people like him. Technically, the story is right. That's what I'm stuck with. You act like I don't like the story. I don't like the story not because the story is wrong, but because the story is right, but it has wrong optics. If that makes sense, that's what I'm stuck with. So, I don't think in the grand scheme of things this matters all that much. Tulsi Gabbard and the things that she's pushing for is the thing that matters. So this is not necessarily something I want to focus on. But, yeah, I do have a thing about being right. It is what it is. And, I don't want to fight a wrong point of view, but if I'm right, I'm right. Jamal is canceled as a human being. Oh, that's wrong. I want a video of that garden gnome. Oh, what did garden gnome ask for a video of? I think Tulsi comment. I like that too, Trudy. The only question left is whether Jamal would physically attack Tulsi if he saw her. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. No, I like her too. I mean, I know people call her boring. I don't think she's boring. I think Okay, that's wrong. I think she's boring sometimes. Sometimes that's a strength. Sometimes that's a weakness. So it just kind of depends. You know how you framed it, backpedaling. I don't know the framing you guys. Again, I'll say it. If you guys think I framed that too strong, fair enough. I don't think that. I'll look back at the story, but I don't think I framed it. And in fact, again, the details of the story are literally correct. Tulsi was interviewed in Las Vegas at Salt Conference by the same host, okay, Breakfast Fundraiser. During the interview, she was asked about Dodd-Frank, and she was... But this is not an argument against me. Like, I guess my point is, this guy can be an awesome human being. He can be the best human being on the planet. The problem is that Fox making this point of she's meeting Wall Street, the guy is from Wall Street. So technically, literally, the story is right. So I have to do a repudiation of my original video. Just saying. But again, I don't really care about this, if that makes... Tulsa's not boring, but she's not emotional. T-Pain for Yang 2020. You know, those things are subjective, man. It depends on the person. Somebody looks at it and calls it boring. Somebody else calls it, you know, just calmness. You know, to each his own. Speeches, that's right. Megan McCarthy, the one who wins will be the closest to right, and they will lose will be the closest to the loser. Yang, a child of fang stocks. You know, her boring voice is sexy. I don't know if her boring voice is sexy or not. Look, I like Tulsi. Nothing has changed on it. I never thought that she was obsequious to cash. I don't think I made that perspective at all. At least I don't think I pushed that perspective. I'm going to have to look at that video again. But on the elements, yeah. What is call-in? So I want to have my wife in for the call-in. So I kind of want her to be with me on that. Optics matter, Trudy. Optics matter. When Jordan contacted Tulsi on this story, by the way, and he asked her, you know, what's the deal with this particular story? And she didn't get back with him on it. And so he ran with the story. Now, fact of the matter is, again, it feels like I'm arguing with the perspective of Wall Street in this case. I imagine he has friends on Wall Street. I imagine he wants some of those friends to donate. That is going to Wall Street. Is that getting super PAC money? No, but I never said that. Is that getting PAC money? No, but I never said that. Is that mean she's obsequious cash? No, but I never said any of those things. So, just saying. I'm going to rewatch the video, though, Trudy. I'm going to rewatch the video. I'm going to rewatch the last video. You can't talk to people without your wife getting suspicious. Kelly Connolly. Oh, no. That's not... No, you mean for the thing. No, it's just... When I do the... what are those things called? When I do the patron appreciation shows, I like them to be both of us because I feel like it's not really a real patron appreciation show if it's not both of us because we've been doing it this way for like 3 months. Also, I feel like it's a different flavor for the audience, and so I don't want to take that flavor away from them when I save those specifically for them. That's all. Stand your ground and don't be bullied by the Tulsi fanatics. I'm not being bullied by the Tulsi fanatics. I don't. I'm gonna have to watch the video again because you know I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. So, military grade holographic move at the speed of light. All right. Yeah, right there. I guess my point is this. If you could have an enlightened billionaire, you can have an enlightened millionaire. FDR was a millionaire. Called him a traitor to his race. So her going to Wall Street doesn't necessarily, in fact, mean that it's wrong. And I think I even said that in that video. In fact, I know I said that in that video. I said all of this stuff in that video. Yeah, I'm not backstepping at all. I'm not taking a step back. Not one step back. One step back and you'll be shot. You see the McAfee dude lose his cool on Twitter. Did he? I'm gonna have to check that out. I know those guys have been pissed off at the trade war with Trump. That it's been pissing people off. I thought Jamarl was going to start a UFO channel. Was that a rumor? No, that's not a rumor. Black Box is started. It started. I just haven't trained to his class. Right, this class. What did I say? Race? I might have said the other thing. I have started that channel. I've added videos to that channel. I haven't added a video to that channel in a few weeks, but it started. Keep in mind, flipping over back and forth is a little odd, and most of my time is spent looking for stories. And not just looking for stories. Sometimes between doing video work, between doing work behind the scenes, between trying to get guests on the show, between going to like DC for that reminds me Monday. Between going to DC for the various shows on Sputnik, trying to fit that in gets a little weird, or it gets a little dicey. It's a mind change. It's a mindset change. It's like, it's just different, that's all. It's just different. But it's out. It's out. Blue, you're exactly right. That was Black Box. Black Box. All right, I'm going to end this. We've gone for 2 hours. We were just running our mouth. I'm not gonna say that. Oh, Trudy. I'm not going there, Trudy. I'm not going there. Yeah, I'm not going there. I'm going to end this here because Trudy is trying to get me hit by my wife. She is attractive. She is attractive. Chess time when... yeah, I haven't played chess in a while. You know, it's funny. We've been playing Beyond Earth Civilization. So do you know what that is? Civilization... There's Civ. There's up to like part 5 of Civ. I think they're on Civ 6 now. That's out. One of my favorite games. That game, like on the Xbox, changed my life. And it didn't change my life, but changed my life. The game is awesome. And so there's a part of Civ when you win the game that you go into space. Now, to me, this was a religious experience. And I know this sounds bizarre, but it was. Playing this game and seeing... I don't know, there was something about it. Going from this nothing to this thing of being a spacefaring civilization, it felt amazing to me. I don't know what it was. But there's a secondary offshoot to that game called Beyond Earth. Civilization Beyond Earth. Now, the original Civilization Beyond Earth is not a good game. They've updated that game with a patch called Rising Tide that makes the game entirely playable. Like, they've added politics to Civ. So there's a political component to this game where you have to end up with these like treaties and all of this other stuff, giving political capital away to the various other countries. And countries can have opinions of you, being how much they are scared of you or how much they respect you. And you have to believe that these guys are even telling you the truth, because sometimes if they're cooperative, like if you're allies, you can let them in your territory and stuff like that. Now that gets a little weird for me. That gets a little heady. That takes me a while to get used to, because I'm like, I don't fucking trust that thing. And so I have like military units following other things. And then after a while you get custom. And at some point you can be allies, but if anything pops off, you're stuck guarding those guys. It's a fascinating, awesome game. So I asked my wife, I lied to her slightly. I said, my audience is extraordinarily interested in you playing this game with me online so everybody can see. Somebody did ask for that, but I don't know how many. I don't think there was a lot of letters about that, but I think one person asked for that. So she plays it once, and she gets hooked. Now, I go out the other day, and I'm waiting for her to do something, and she was supposed to be like studying for the test and everything else, and I said, so where were you? She was like, sorry, I'm late. I'm like, no, it's not a big deal. She says, I was playing the game. It was like 3 hours. I don't know where the time went. The game is a time sink. Like, you're sitting there and you're growing a civilization. And you get into these like little dramas. Like, you know, I need to get XYZ accomplished, in which case I need to build this in order to go get that. And so I may need a rescue mission in which I have this. The game gets involved, man. especially when you get into wars. I started a war. I got into a war with one of the other countries, crushed them. And so there was a war score. So they sued for peace, in which case I accepted their peace. But I extracted a penalty for that peace that I accepted. And so I just kind of assumed that I was still the stronger power in this situation since I was able to extract those penalties. And little did I know that over the years, they had gotten strong and it got to the point where my border was expanding, and I just assumed that, I can expand my border up to their border, because what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? You're going to, you just got your ass handed to you several years ago. Not so much. That kid had grown up. And they were like these border skirmishes, and then the border skirmishes got, it's like shit got real when they started pumping out these heavy arsenals that nothing I had could ding. Like, imagine a situation where everything that you have in your arsenal hits it, and it's like it doesn't do anything. Like, barely polishes the paint, and they're like shooting my shit out the air. And I'm trying to sue for peace. And we're like, all right, dude, all right. And he's like, this war has just started. Like, he's being a hard ass. The game is awesome. The game is absolutely awesome. Vote for me. I suck the bombs. Oh, that's wrong, J. Scott. That's wrong. Spliff is a really nice word. Spliff is a really nice word. Jamarl bragged about oppressing other countries. I can't believe him. No! You know the what? Oh, God. I guess I did brag about that. You know the fucked up part about it? My politics gets in the way of my game playing. Because there are politics in the game. And so it's like, do you want to disband unions, or do you... Fuck no, I don't want to disband unions. But then you start thinking, well, what society are we in? Are we in a society that has the exact same problems on Earth? Meaning, like, the situation may be different. So it may not be a situation where you need to disband unions because the reason for unions may be different now. All of that stuff comes into play when you're thinking about it. You're not on Earth anymore. It's like you're in a colony on another planet and you're growing with other colonies. Oppress is a bad word. That's not a word I choose to use. That's not a word I choose to use. Yeah, that's not a word I choose to use at all. Workers and Resources Soviet Republic City Builders game. War games are fun. Well, see, this is not a war game, even though you can end up in war. Like it's a civilization game. Like, it literally is what it is. You're building a civilization, and some of the conflicts that you get in real life end up happening in the game. Like, so say for example, you're expanding and there's a resource that you need in order to build something else. Maybe you want to build a wonder or something. And one of the other cities tries to get that resource. How do you stop the city from getting that resource? Now, you can try to negotiate with the city for the resource. You can use a black market thing, like one of your spies to try to get it on the black market. But those things take a lot of time. And if you're the stronger power, do you really want to wait all of that time? I mean, you have shit to do. Now, so the game allows a certain degree of there's certain problems that you end up with in the game that you end up with in real life. So it's one thing if the powers are somewhat relatively equal and there's a certain degree of respect and everything else, you can hold your own, okay, fair enough. But the game can have an alliance system that can end up in a world war just like in real life. The game is really out there, man. It's a fucking awesome game. It's a badass game. I love it. You can shit while you play. That's nasty. But yes, I guess you could. No wonder he thought it was okay to smear Tulsi without evidence. Oh, God. And what do you mean without evidence? When I did this video, I literally... Yeah, I'm not going there. Not going there again. Not going there. The archer takes a whole bushel of wheat and takes like 5 turns to make it. It takes a horse for 1 turn and you lose your whole arm. You're talking, you're talking about the regular game, Civilization. That is one of the most aggravating things. Like, you take forever to build something. Say, for example, you build your first ship. Whatever that ship is, you build your first ship. It takes forever. It takes like 20 turns because, you just started. And then it gets sunk in this kind of probabilistic fuckery. Yeah, it's painful. It's painful. It really is. It totally is, but it's a lot of fun, and it adds a certain degree of like, you don't want to lose it. Like, because it's taking so long to build, you don't want to lose it, even though it doesn't matter one iota. None of the stuff is real. None of it has any real world value at all. And yet you still feel a certain degree invested. It's so bizarre. I've been following Jamarl since only 60 followers. I get upset when he gets full of... What are you talking about full of myself? God. You just disagree with me. There is a difference in those things. And yes, Pat, you've been with me for fucking ever. And so I would say give me the benefit of the doubt and just we disagree. It's not... But I am going to look at the video, by the way. So I'm not saying this is an absolute. But my memory of events, I'm disagreeing. I'm going to end this here because this is going way too long. Yeah, right. All right. I'm going to end this here. I'm going to take Austin's heads up. Thanks, guys. Hopefully my wife can do this either tomorrow or the day after, but I'm going to check with her and see when we can get a proper patron appreciation episode in. As far as I know, I gotta be honest. This is why I cringe at doing shows. I tend to function better in a singular fashion. In some degree because of stuff like this. She's going to be away for the next week or two. She's going to see her dad, which means that the show, she's not gonna be on the show next Sunday either, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know how that's gonna work. Maybe we can do a hangout together. Maybe that'll work. We'll work around it. We'll find a way to do it. But however we make this work, we'll try to get another show in during the week that can be a proper patron appreciation episode. But hopefully you guys didn't hate my meager presence. I'm still here, Jamarl, and I've jumped ship on others for much less. I don't know what it is you guys are talking about. Okay, Pat. I just disagree with you on this particular thing. But fair enough. Bernie Sanders would deliver a major address of how democratic socialism is the only way to defeat oligarchy and authoritarianism. Mark your calendar, Wednesday, June 12th. Nice. All right. Let's see if we can cover that. What do I have on June Wednesday? Fuck. I have this has been a pain in my ass to try to work around. When I used to do videos before we went traveling, I used to do treatments at home. So I could essentially do videos around my treatment schedule. So even though I was always doing videos, it didn't really matter because, again, they would just be around my schedule. Traveling destroyed that entirely, in which case I had to just get them when I can get them, depending on the country that I was in. And getting back into the States has destroyed it that much more so. Because it's the same issue. It's little to no difference than traveling abroad, with the exception of more access. But it's still trying to figure out a way to work those in a schedule and work those around my video schedule. I'm going to try to cover that. So that's going to be Wednesday at 2 p.m. I got to be honest. I don't think Biden makes it. And I think Elizabeth Warren, and maybe I could be wrong on this, I think Elizabeth Warren becomes the number 2 corporate candidate. I think she's a fudgeable candidate in this case, meaning she's a spongy candidate. There's no way, with the exception of certain ideas, I don't necessarily believe the things necessarily surrounding her. I think she does want a wealth tax. I think she does have this notion of being, let's say, an evolved capitalist, if those two things can be used together. But changing anything in a real substantial way, no, she would leave the edifice the same, which is why I suspect she'll be their choice. Or the person that they are pushing for. It seems to be the person MSNBC is pushing for, CNN is pushing for. So, but we'll see. I could be wrong. Pat, yeah, man, I would say give me the benefit of the doubt, Pat. We just disagree. People can disagree. I've disagreed with people and still been down with those people. I'm trying to see who. And again, I didn't smear her. I guess that's the part that's getting me. It wasn't a smear to just give an indication of reality. I mean, come on. I heard Hillary just killed her brother. Oh, God. Oh, God. The body count. The Hillary body count. I think HA is right. What did HA say? Hillary off her brother. Fess up, Jamarl. It doesn't matter to Tulsi, but it does matter to you because you do good reporting. Got dinged by the incident. You should admit it and move on with integrity. That's what I'm telling you. Dinged how? I corrected myself when I got it wrong. The original story was right, even though the impression that they were giving was wrong. I did a video correcting that video saying, yes, she is meeting somebody from Wall Street. She is meeting Wall Street. And yes, he did ask for money during that thing. Now, you could say that the connotation was wrong, but I'm not backing away with that at all. I understand you guys are fans of Tulsi, and so am I. And I hated to report that story, but I reported it because the story was right. So, it's what it is. You guys can disagree with me on it, but you just disagree with me on it. 3 cops who had access to Anthony Weiner's laptop have died in the last week. No way. Are you serious? Are you serious? No way. Trump will keep calling Warren Pocahontas and she would lose. I think that too, Fred Edwards. I think that too. I think he would get on a debate stage and he would call her Pocahontas and then he would say, Pocahontas, where are all the haberdashers gone? That's what I think. That's what I think. Bernie is now live at the Dunkeek on his YouTube channel. Oh, God. Essentially a hate rally. The only thing I know is that HA has 140,000 subscribers. Yes, he does. HA and I remember when HA started. I like HA. I like HA. So I'm gonna just leave it there. And he started as a lefty, and now he's a gun-toting Trump supporter. And people ding him for this notion that he went in the direction of the current. I would say this. You can be trapped by your audience. Like, imagine for the moment that you're a lefty. You're doing videos about Clinton because you dislike Clinton. You think they cheated you. And you find more and more people end up on your channel agreeing with you that Clinton sucks, but not necessarily agreeing with you on the other stuff. They just agree with you that Clinton sucks. And the more you hate Clinton, the more they love you for it. Where do you go with that? Like, the moment that you say something other than hating Clinton, it's almost like, you have to choose a partner where you can have more than sex with because you're going to have something other than sex at some point. It's like, yes, sex is great with this person, but, we argue, fuss, fight the rest of the time. We have a horrible relationship. Maybe you shouldn't be together. It's that notion of the audience. Sometimes you get trapped by the audience that you're with. Is it better to have less subscribers and not get trapped with an audience as opposed to having an audience that just kind of grows with you even though it's slower? Depends on how many kids you have to feed. And I know that's a horrible answer, but in reality, I think it depends on how many kids you have to feed. Of course, it depends on more than that, but how many kids makes that more difficult to back down. That makes it a hell of a lot more difficult to back down. Always stick to the truth as possible. Yes, Shane Wolf, yes. It's easier to defend. Honestly, it really, like, the worst thing in the world is to defend a video that you don't like. Like, when I did this video, this was like years ago. This was like a year or so ago. And people got pissed off at the video. Now, there's some videos that I am perfectly okay with defending, especially when it's like war stuff and that type of stuff where it feels like there's something in you that tells you this is the right thing to do to defend it. There are other videos where you did kind of as a throwaway and you're like, fuck, this is not the video I want to talk about. Like, not only don't I care about it, and it's not even so much whether I'm right or wrong about it, it's just the fact that you get bogged down sometimes in it. So, it is what it is. It is what it is. It is what it is. Has someone ever been tasered? What? No, I like AJ, man. HA came on my show. It's like whatever disagreement, HA was always willing to come on the show to talk about it. He's always had the attitude of, if you want to talk about it. And even when I had like 10,000 subscribers, they had like 100,000. He's still willing to come on the show. So I don't dislike him at all. I mean, I disagree with him on some stuff, but I don't dislike him. Not to mention, he's always been open to talk about it. All right. Jamarl is Tulsi's apologist sheepdog too. Oh God, I'm an apologist sheepdog now. Beforehand, I'm smearing her now. I'm a sheepdog ever. All right, I'm gonna end this. And guys, I do appreciate you guys helping out the show. And if you thought I was too hard on the Tulsi thing, I'm gonna check the video out. You may be right. You may be wrong. Some of the stuff gets subjective. But I do thank you all for watching the show, and I do thank you all for hanging around. I want to get the Patreon appreciation episode. I feel a responsibility to get those in because I don't feel I do enough for my patrons. And I feel like I have a certain appreciation for people who contribute to the show, who even just watch the show and share it. And I often think to myself, okay, what can you give in order to try to mend the gap other than the show itself? The thing that I know I can give is just doing the show. The Patron Appreciation Show is something extra, but I try to do it anyway. And I try to make sure it's at the very least on around the day. And in an odd way, I've gotten accustomed to the show being just me and my wife, because I think it gives a different energy to the show that people get. And I think they like it. I think there's an aspect of the show that likes having, being honest, a woman around. I know that sounds out there. There's some of the male guests like, what? What do you mean like having a woman around? All right. If you guys enjoy the content, you find yourself coming back here often, please consider sharing, liking. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. And what I might do, guys, is I might save this one for patrons. Yeah, I might save this one for patrons and still do a patron appreciation episode. Maybe that's the least I can do. All right, guys. Have a good one. And there it is.